Go.
Hello everybody, my name is Alfonso Cacciatore and I'd like to take the time to talk with you why you should support affirmative action. Discrimination towards minorities and women remains an issue in America that has not yet been eradicated. The times have shifted from overt racism and sexism being displayed to more subtle forms of discrimination, such as lack of opportunities to improve their educational and professional futures. Difficult economic circumstances and systemic racism and sexism has kept oppressed individuals from reaching their full potential. It is a policy implemented in the workplace and college admissions to improve the success of minorities and women in college admissions and in workplaces. Affirmative action should remain as a policy because it negates the effect of past and present discrimination. It balances setbacks of economic classes and it promotes diversity. Affirmative action was introduced in the 1960s as a means of remedying the problems of discrimination in jobs and colleges, but many people firmly believe that it is not an ethical solution and causes reverse discrimination against non-minorities. I want to argue that it should be supported because affirmative action is not reverse racism, but rather a way to involve incredibly capable candidates who were previously excluded because of past and present prejudice. Impacts certain groups of people, which is what affirmative action attempts to solve. You may be wondering, how is discrimination present in systemic ways? Let's consider the wages of minorities compared to white people. The Pew Research Organization made an article about the racial wage gap, showing that minorities receive much lower wages than white people on average. This translates into worse living conditions, such as schooling, opportunities, in poor communities, and this ultimately stunts the ability to achieve more in life. The American Progress Organization have found that people of color remain overrepresented in common low-paying jobs. We can see that in many cases poverty leads to continual poverty through generations, and this heavily affects minority communities. This lack of opportunity set up by a long history of marginalizing minorities is something that persists through generations. This lack of equal representation in job sectors further indicates that minorities are just not in the same, don't have the same advantages as realistically white people. In another article by Pew Research, they show that many women face various forms of discrimination in the workplace. A continuous problem is that women on average make far less money than men do. There's a general belief that racism is considered non-existent today, but plenty of data shows otherwise, that is far from the truth. Affirmative action is a method of lessening these issues that minorities and women encounter by giving greater opportunities to each party. Affirmative action advocates for the equality of opportunity by limiting discrimination that hinders a person's capability to succeed. The policy helps people with acceptances into colleges and with hiring processes for jobs, with the hope of balancing economic setbacks that have an influence for generations to come. The Pew organization have found that minorities experience much worse schooling when compared to white people. There was an understanding that certain groups of people simply do not have the resources to attain their goals in higher education and professions, and equally, education and professional setting goes hand in hand. Affirmative action can mediate the problems of lower quality schools and conditions for minorities by balancing the way colleges and jobs look at minority applicants. Rather than being compared to others on a standard basis, they are now viewed through a more holistic approach that considers their precious lack of opportunities as well, leading to more acceptance and hiring. Affirmative action is implemented to lower socioeconomic gaps by giving better opportunities to those that would have never been received by them. Objections towards the policy claim that it is reverse action, but affirmative action is a method of giving fair opportunity where it has been lacking for generations. We cannot deny that for generations, white people have been making it harder for minorities to succeed in the U.S., while making it easier for themselves. Affirmative action gives a chance to those that need it and pushes far more diversity in a very diverse nation. My last point. Through providing equality of opportunity for historically oppressed people, affirmative action promotes diversity in various environments. College campuses and workplaces are becoming more representative of the nation's demographics, further supporting inclusively regardless of race and gender. A Forbes survey directed towards board members of Fortune 500 corporations reported that, I believe it was 80 or 85% of respondents agree that a diverse workforce is necessary to drive innovation, creativity, and just a thriving work environment. Without measures like affirmative action, many marginalized individuals would find it more difficult to move ahead in life. Another likely consequence would be a decline in diversity in higher areas of education and professions. The U.S. would further reward nepotism and possibly push the gap further between oppressed groups and those at the top. Affirmative action is important for diversity in our nation and should be supported by those that value equality and justice. In conclusion, systemic discrimination remains to exist in a world that keeps trying to get rid of it. Oppressed groups face worse living standards and do not receive the opportunities to improve their lives as those in higher economic classes. Affirmative action aids minorities and women in college admissions and the workforce. It should remain as a policy for time to come. I myself have shared something with everybody. I myself have a Latina daughter. She's half Latina, half white, and I want her to have the same opportunities as anyone else in this country. And just to piggyback off of that, my job, which is extremely male dominated, I think we're progressing in the right direction with affirmative action because I work in a very male dominated field. My supervisor's a female, my co-workers are females. I'm actually one of the only males in a very male dominated field. So I think, just to complete this, I think our country has done a lot for affirmative action, but I think there is more we can do to progress that whole conflict, which keeps persisting. Thank you.